everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, October 20th, 2022. The year is rushing by. Thank goodness, because I don't know if we could stand any more of Joe Bidenenko or Emmanuel Macaroni or Liz Truss. In fact, she just resigned, I heard, shortly before I decided to do this recording. So, that was a very short premiership. But anyway, we have some news, but first let's take care of the housekeeping. Remember, there is no vid chat tomorrow. That will be a week from tomorrow. And I will be putting up the chat link this weekend, so please remember to start looking for that and to get your questions and comments in before 10 o'clock U.S. Central Time next Thursday. Anyway, a bit of good news today, and I know we could all use some. This is coming from the Epoch Times. This is an article by Katie Spence. It's dated October 18th, so just a couple days ago. And I'm going to read the headline and several paragraphs from here because I think this news speaks for itself, and I hope that it's presaging things to come. So the article's titled, "Missouri is the latest state to divest from BlackRock over a woke political agenda." And I'm starting right at the beginning of this article. Here we go. Quote, "Missouri plans to remove $500 million of its pension fund investments from BlackRock, making it the latest state to divest from the world's largest asset manager in response to the company's overt leftist agenda." State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick announced the plans on October 18th. The realignment followed Louisiana's October 5th announcement of its pending removal of $794 million from BlackRock and divestments of $100 million and $125 million by Utah and Arkansas, respectively. So, in other words, states are pulling their money out of one of the most notoriously woke companies in the country. The withdrawals result from BlackRock's environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, initiatives and its prioritization of a woke political agenda. Quote, "We should not allow asset managers such as BlackRock, who have demonstrated that they will prioritize advancing a woke political agenda above the financial interests of their customers, to continue speaking on behalf of the state of Missouri," unquote, Fitzpatrick told Fox Business. Fitzpatrick's statement echoes Louisiana Treasurer John Schroeder, who stated in an October 5th letter to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, quote, "Your blatantly anti-fossil fuel policies would destroy Louisiana's economy. We cannot be party to the crippling of our own economy," unquote. And, for those of you in Europe, sit up and take notice. Now, I'm skipping just one paragraph here to continue in this article. Quote, "Over the past few years, BlackRock's CEO has pursued an aggressive agenda focusing on shaping society to meet a specific political agenda. In his 2020 letter to CEOs, Fink wrote that BlackRock would significantly reallocate its capital from, quote, investments that present a high sustainability-related risk, such as thermal coal producers, unquote, and screen against investing in other fossil fuels. He then added a warning to CEOs, quote, "Last year, BlackRock voted against or withheld votes from 4,800 directors at 2,700 different companies. Where we feel companies and boards are not producing effective sustainability disclosures or implementing frameworks for managing these issues, we will hold board members accountable," unquote. Now, stop right there and let that sink in. We have a corporation willing to punish people that are not on board with its corporate agenda. Now, folks, I submit to you that what I've been saying for many years is coming to pass. That when you make a corporation a legal person and then exempt it from the responsibilities of normal persons under the law, then that corporation is going to become more and more tyrannical until the point, and I don't think we're very far from it, quite frankly, where a corporation will actually start putting people to death, number one, because it's exempt from the law and its boards of directors are exempt from personal accountability to what their corporation does in the name of its persona ficta. We are one step away from that. Now, I've been arguing all along that the way you get rid of this is you either get rid of the doctrine of corporate personhood altogether, a difficult task, but it nonetheless is something that needs to be looked at. And if you cannot do that, then you make it absolutely a requirement for every corporate charter in this country, no matter what corporation it is or what country it's based in, it has to enshrine and obey the Bill of Rights in its corporate charter. Clearly, BlackRock is basically becoming nothing but an extension of the United Nations with its policy. So this is something that needs to be looked at very carefully. But I think there's other things to look at here, but I want to continue with just 3 more paragraphs from this article. Quote, red states have now pulled over $3.2 billion from BlackRock over the ESG scam. West Virginia $1.5 billion, Louisiana $800 million, Missouri $500 million, South Carolina $200 million, Arkansas $125 million, Utah $100 million, and more coming. On October 12th, UBS analyst Brennan Hawken downgraded, listen to this, folks, downgraded BlackRock stock to neutral from buy, stating that BlackRock's ESG focus had become increasingly risky. And now I'm skipping all the way to the end of this article. BlackRock has been accused of boycotting energy companies. Quite the opposite, says BlackRock's corporate website. BlackRock's clients are some of the largest investors in the energy industry. In the U.S. alone, we have invested $170 billion on behalf of our clients in American energy companies, including pipelines and power generation facilities, unquote. It's just a clever business thing. Drive the fossil fuel competition out of business, then buy up their properties on the cheap. So in other words, it sounds to me like behind all of this ESG wokery, you also just have plain old predatory business practices. But here's the last paragraph, quote, still, BlackRock's, quote, net zero fiduciary approach, unquote, states that, quote, BlackRock is committed to supporting the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 or sooner, and has undertaken several key actions to help further that transition. That includes prompting companies to, quote, disclose a plan for how their business model will be compatible with a net zero economy, unquote, and how each company will improve its, quote, long-term plans to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion as appropriate by region, unquote. So there you have it. It's a woke company. Now, what I'm going to suggest is also something a little wild and woolly. But you're noticing these states in the United States are divesting themselves from, in this case, a company whose woke agenda is rather well known. Now, I'm going to submit to you that what you're really watching is of a piece with what these states would be doing if they were preparing for an eventual crack-up of this country. We've already seen several states, beginning with Texas, create their own bullion depositories, in other words, their own banks. We've seen several states pass legal tender currency resolutions recognizing bullion and specie as a legal money. And in other words, that means these states are already taking aim at the idea of central bank digital currency, which, again, folks, I got to warn you. If you're buying into that scam, be prepared to have everything that you own taken away from you if you don't behave. And that includes not just your money, that includes your titles, your records, and so on and so forth. So in other words, these people are playing for keeps. They want to enslave you. Now, these states, in my opinion, are fighting back. And this step of taking the pension fund monies out of the hands of investment companies like this and putting that money in more trustworthy companies to handle investments, that's the other thing you would be doing if indeed you were preparing for an eventual crack up. I think it's coming, folks. So please make sure your pensions in your states are in good, sound hands. As for BlackRock, as far as I'm concerned, it couldn't happen to a more deserving group of people. This is a story to watch, and we'll see if this kind of pension revolt begins to spread from BlackRock to other similarly minded companies. This is kind of like a real anti-federalist Occupy Wall Street movement. It's not exactly a populist movement, but then again, you can't dismiss that influence from what's going on here. Anyway, that's it. Very important news for today. I hope a bit of good news to everybody. Hang on over there in Europe. We know that it's bad and it needs to be taken care of. We need to start directing and focusing all that anger on the people whose names are in the news in both continents all the time, because they're the ones responsible for this mess, and they need to be held accountable for it. Anyway, that's it for News and Views from the Nefarium this week. We'll see you on the flip side. Don't forget, there's no vid chat tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody, and God bless.